This is Thoughts with C, J, and L.
A podcast by three Asian American people with thoughts on being Asian, American, and people.
In this episode, we're talking about change.
Hi, everyone.
Everyone.
Okay, this is our summer special on change. So some context for this topic. 2 weeks ago, we were all hanging out in person and we attempted a live studio audience recording, which was fine. It was fun. It was a great time, but it was also a really chaotic time. I felt very chaotic. I was about to move.
Because we weren't even expecting to record. And then we were just like, all right, let's have a live studio audience and record everything on the spot.
In theory, it was a good idea and it was fun, but making the podcast, different vibe.
Yeah, it was a good time. But topically, we were like, maybe we should think about this more. I realized I need the outline.
There was no outline.
Yeah, there was no outline. But anyway, we have one now. Anyway, the topic that we kind of came up with generally for that was advice to our past selves and then each other. And then also kind of advice to our future selves. But we were all like, maybe not, because none of us know anything about the future because we're all going through a really intense transition phase. And so we're like, maybe we talk about freaking out about the future instead. And then somehow landed on the topic of change because that's what we're all going through.
Timothy really buzzer beater kind of moment of introduce this topic. So I'm excited.
Yeah.
Also, side idea, we take the clips of the live studio audience and insert them in this one so that it's still included. I don't know. That's something for someone else to decide, not me. But just
our future editor to decide.
Shout out to our future editor. I don't know who you are yet, but that's a part of the change that's about to happen. Segueing into that.
Okay, how do we want to get into the topic of change? What is changing for y'all?
Oh, should we give a life update?
We're all going to grad school and we're all moving for grad school. So
new city, new school.
Yeah.
New lifestyle, new friends, hopefully.
No new friends. We're just going to call each other from every day.
That's true.
Yeah, I think new expectations for ourselves and things that we want to do in this stage of life is going to be different too. I don't know. I think where we are right now in terms of our age or life stage, things are pretty chaotic and there's no set expectation of anything. Up until now, I think we've always been yep, school. And we're going to more school, granted, but it's still we're all going into very professional school type of school.
Yes.
Remember in one podcast, I said I want to be more eloquent and it's not coming out. So clearly some things still need to change. It's going to be a different scene for sure from something that we've experienced before.
At least for me. I'm in the stage where it's right before a lot of changes are happening. Well, I guess for all three of us, we're all in the stage of we're about to start school, we're about to move, or we have moved already. So it's interesting to go from one stage to another. It's in the before stage, how are you mentally preparing yourself for the changes that are coming? And then after the changes happen, how do you adapt to that?
And I think we're all in the process right now of the change. If you were to say those 2 points in time, we're right in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It'll be an interesting perspective.
I agree. Okay, I have felt super conflicted about all of this because I think the big thing for me is moving. I'm not going to be in Michigan anymore. I don't know if I've talked about this on previous episodes, but I moved around quite a bit. Being in Michigan, it's the longest place I've lived my whole life. And so I think earlier this year, when it started to become kind of clear to me that I was going to be moving for grad school, I had a really hard time, an unexpectedly hard time with that. I was so confused too for a long time. There's a lot of internal conflict over this. And I think it was the first time I had felt conflicted over the move. For me, moving has just always been oh, it's just something that happens. I specifically remember the transition from high school to college. I was I need to get out of here. But then this time, it's definitely been a lot different. Part of me is like, maybe I'm just growing up and I'm too tired to change, but I don't know. So I think for me, the specific piece of the change that has weighed on my mind the most is the physical moving to a new place. Because, I like look forward to grad school. I look forward to growing career wise, all of that. But the physical move, like I've thought a lot about that.
Okay, I was talking about moving the other day with someone, and they were just saying like how many small things that we don't really think about, and like small decisions that kind of add up into something that becomes really stressful, even though like the small things aren't, like figuring out Wi-Fi or electricity, also figuring out what's important enough for you to bring. Because I don't know if you had this mindset, but like where you just moved to is probably temporary, and you also didn't have all the space in the world to move everything over, so you kind of had to pick and choose. And like for me, that's hard. I'm so bad at making decisions like that. And then it's kind of deeper underneath that. It's like, what's important to me enough to take with me? And I think that's also something that's hard to, an energy.
Yeah. And then
Like,
that's
which BTS poster do I take?
I know, I was literally about to say
Yeah.
guys, listen, it's fine. New era, new posters.
Wait, but I feel like that's interesting that not only are you going through change, but your reaction to change is also changing. Because when you're little, moving from place to place, you're used to that kind of change and it didn't faze you that much. But now that you're moving to another place for grad school, you have a different reaction.
Oh my gosh, I have two thoughts. One to each of you. For Loho, okay, all those little decisions about the physical move, that's, I think, reflective of what we kind of have to think about in the entire process of when things change. Because when things change, you yourself, you also change with them. So it's like, what pieces of myself do I want to bring? What needs to go? Red flags that need to go.
Leave all the red flags at home. You don't bring any of the red flags with you. You bring plain flags, and they'll take themselves in the new place wherever you go.
And then to Jam, I really liked where I live for the past 6 years. There's just no way anything's gonna top that.
Aww.
Yeah, I feel like it was a really weird realization for the first time ever that I like actually made it to a point where I kind of liked where things were. And I finally made it through like a 8-month stretch where I was like, oh, things are pretty good. I could keep doing this. And then I'm like, am I really about to change this? I don't know. We'll see.
Oh my gosh. Wait, I was literally talking about this with my parents the other day. I feel like for such a long time, I kept looking forward to change because I wasn't satisfied with how things were at the moment, whether that's like I didn't want to stay in high school or like I didn't want to hang out with the same people. I didn't want to study or like take whatever course. And like, okay, as long as I can get over this period of time, it's fine. And I'll look forward to something else in the future. But now, for me, for the past year or 2 years, things have been pretty good and I've been pretty happy. And it's scary to think that a lot of changes are coming because I'm finally at a point in my life where I'm like satisfied and content. But then with all of the changes that are coming, it brings so much uncertainty. And it's like you're rolling the dice again. It's like, what if you end up with something that's less ideal than what you have right now?
I have 5 responses. I've been thinking about it a lot. And it's something that, I've gone through several times, just going from like West Coast to Midwest, back to West Coast to East Coast, back to West Coast situation. But there's one quote that I may or may not have gotten from a TikTok or maybe some juicy literature because maybe I can read, but it was definitely a TikTok. One quote was, "You will never be completely at home again because part of your heart always will be elsewhere." No. That is the price you pay for Let me finish. That is the price you pay for the richness of loving and knowing people in more than one place.
No.
Which that one I think speaks to all of us. Another thing, I think there is also comfort in knowing that you are comfortable in a certain place. You can always go back to it and, maybe things won't be exactly the same, but you do know that there is a place out there that fits for you and some place that you love. And so I think that's also comforting. It's like a security thing of being able to go somewhere else and figure it out. And it's, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And you can go back home and like, you know, people also too, like having the comfort of knowing that people love you somewhere and you have a place to go and you always have a place to go. And then another quote is, you get a strange feeling when you're about to leave a place. Like you'll not only miss the people you love, but you'll miss the person you are now at this time and this place because you'll never be this way again. I think that we all like ourselves to an extent. But I think too, like this quote is kind of sad, but it's also like you take that piece of who you became at a certain place and you take that with you, and that doesn't really change. Like you can keep what you want and get rid of all the red flags. I think that's growth. I'm pretty sure that's growth. And then another thing to respond about was, I was talking about this with someone who I tell everything to. So basically, like they know about all the changes that I've gone through. But like one thing that stuck with me was he was like, yeah, you're freaking out about it, but like whenever you tell me about different like places that you've been to or like things that you've done, like it's always a good time, even if it starts off pretty bad. The thing that was good about the place wasn't like the place or the people. Like, yes, it was. Context and setting is important, but like the common factor there was like I was there. So wherever I go, that's where like the good times follow kind of thing, which
For a good time.
it's me, I'm the good time. So I think what I'm trying to say from that is that you should all follow me where I go so that it's a good time.
Exactly. That's why we all gotta end up in the same place. I also read somewhere that I thought was pretty interesting, where society in the past, because like we didn't have the means to travel all over the place, where we grow up is most likely where you're gonna end up. Instead of moving from place to place, you stay and the community where you grew up grows. But nowadays, because we have technology and because we emphasize like moving for work or like moving for like adult stuff, instead of building like a solid community in one place, we jump from place to place and we get good at making friends really quickly, but it's like not necessarily a community. How much change is like ideal?
I think this is kind of related to our point of discussion, Jam, or our point of contention.
Go on.
Okay. So for some context, this is a callback to our live studio take. But we were talking about some advice. My take was that change is the only thing that you like can control in life. Coming from someone who's been working like a little bit now, I think I've realized that if I don't want things to change, they don't have to change. Like they can just stay the same forever. I can just keep living in my apartment in Michigan and working my job. But if I want to, you know, pick myself up and go to grad school or whatever, like that's like something that I have to decide. And that's something that I have control over. And so I was coming from the perspective of change is always a good thing because it's like something that you actualize or manifest. But then Jam had a different take.
Okay, well,
Basically the exact opposite.
as always. Well, okay. The opposite of what you said is change is something that you can't control. I don't think that was the exact take that I was going for. I think I was more towards change is the only constant in life. But I was having a discussion with someone last night and we were talking about this. I think that discussion made me realize that there's like different kinds of changes, right? There's changes externally, but there's also changes internally. And it depends on which one you focus on for our respective takes. So when I say that like change is the only constant in life, I think I focus more on the changes that are going externally because I can't control like what other people are doing or whatever. Then it seems like something is always constantly changing. But if you look at it from like a wider perspective, like the entire world, change isn't going to happen unless there's some kind of action. And also it's like whatever changes that are going on in the outside, internally you're going to be changing as well to adapt to that. I don't really know where I'm going with this, but these are just some thoughts.
No. I thought about that. I mean, I think it was like only a blip in our recording, but I have been thinking about it so much. Because, like, okay, with internal change too, right? I think I have always been like, you can't change a person unless like they want to be changed. people are just like, sometimes people are just the same. You don't change unless you want to. But then sometimes there's like internal growth. Well, I think with that, you kind of have to be open to growing and reflecting. That's like something, you and I have to take action on. But the other perspective, kind of like going off of what you said, Jam, I think when I was feeling really like discouraged about moving and stuff, my mom was like, she's trying to hype me up. And she was like, well, if you're sad about leaving or whatever, like, are all your friends going to still be in the area? Like, what's happening with them? And then I was like, no, like, things are changing for a lot of people like my age, because that's just the stage of life that we're in. And she's like, well, yeah, like, things are going to change whether or not they change for you specifically. And so you're never going to like be able to have exactly what you have right now again, regardless of what you do. Even if you decide to stay and not go because you're so down bad over this whole situation, like, things are still going to be different. Kind of goes with what you're saying, Jam. Like, there's a lot of external stuff that just changes that you can't control. And even when we were talking about the whole natural change versus artificial change and like milestones, like, it happens because we live in a society, not because like, when I think about the biggest changes in my life, they're not really at those like set milestones. I don't know, when I was a kid, and like when I was 12, and then I think 16, and then maybe like halfway through college. Like, I don't think of like, oh, when I graduated from high school, that was like a big end of an era. I think from middle of high school to middle of college, that was like an era for me. And then middle of college till now, that was an era for me. But then I like graduated at some point in there.
Yeah.
But then there's also those like social milestones where like, okay, we all graduated from high school, we moved. We all graduated from undergrad, we moved. But like my personal, like in my mind, when I think about periods of time, I don't necessarily think about them in parallel with those big social milestones.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because we're not like other people.
I don't know. I think hearing both of those takes, and like, it sounds like you guys agree with each other, but also have different takes, which.
Okay, I feel like the difference is in the word control. Because Kat's take is that change is the only thing that you can control. And my take is that like you can't control change. But then I feel like that can go down a rabbit hole of, is there free will? Is there free will at all? Or is it all a domino effect? And all the changes that are happening, whether it's externally or internally, is just a domino effect from whatever happened before, which is from what happens before that. And then what's
no,
links
it's
back
9
to like the beginning of
a.m.
It's 7 a.m.
Yeah, like even like the adaptations that you make to changes externally, is that you wanting to change, or is that you reacting to change?
I'm sure some of it is like pretty subconscious too. Okay, so basically, this is no longer an episode about change, it's a simulation.
Wait, we never talked about the simulation part.
Well, that's what season 4 is for.
Oh,
Yeah.
true.
It needs a whole season.
I don't think we should go down the free will rabbit hole just to guide the conversation a little bit, but we can entertain the idea for a second.
I was gonna say, I think that, well, okay, because we've got two things going on here. We've got reaction to change and then self-initiated change.
Is it self-initiated though?
Well, I think so, because like,
do we have a self?
We're just code.
We're just neurotransmitters.
We're just
our brains.
Different slabs of meat. Okay, I think this will transition away from what we've been talking about.
Maybe we should just, go.
I can change the topic about change. Like, if you want to keep talking about it, let it out, because I know it'll be in the back of your mind for a while.
No, I've lost it at this point.
I said my take.
This is Hot Takes with C, J, and L.
I think it's just the vibes. Whatever.
It's just a vibration.
Whatever the vibes say, it is what it is. That's my take.
Changes are just vibes.
Yeah. No,
Everything is
seriously.
just a vibe.
It's just the vibe.
Everything is just a vibe. We're just little particles bouncing off each other, willingly or unwillingly.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
Because if you're just bouncing, you can decide to stop bouncing. You can just be a
Wait,
be
can
a
you though?
rock.
But is it random? Is it
Wait.
random bouncing?
Okay, it's
We're
like
deciding though.
okay, it's like think about it like this. It's an ocean. It's an ocean, okay? But in the ocean there are rocks and there are fish. So the fish move around with the water. They're like, yeah, responsive. There are rocks. I'm just gonna sit here and sink to the bottom and
But
decide not to move and not respond.
decide?
Do rocks decide? Or is it just because a
It's a-
rock is a rock? Like everything
Yeah, well, some
everywhere all at
people,
once.
they're just okay. I think we should move on.
No, I kind of like that analogy though. I don't think it's one or the other. I personally like this is what I was gonna say earlier, but like I personally think it's a combination of the two. If we're still going with this ocean analogy, like, we are fish who can swim in whatever direction we want to, but also like in the context of the ocean, like our decisions aren't in a vacuum that only affect ourselves. And so like you just need to be cognizant of what your actions do, but also like realize that you have the power to also move the ocean in one way or the other. In the context of like changing ideas or like changing society. I was listening to a podcast about like activism. And because even if you try to move the ocean as a small little fish, like you really can't. And sometimes like other fish won't want to move or something like that. And so the most you can do is kind of like come up with your own ideas of just try to make people think a different way at least and show them that there's another option other than what they've already known if they want to actually create this change and have a reason for why they should change. Just kind of throwing it out there that like it's a mix. I don't think it's one or the other personally. As with internal monologues, I see what you're both saying, but I also think that it's like not that.
Dude, this literally happens every single time where Kat and I are on opposite ends and then Loho's right in the middle.
This is why our conversations are interesting.
Thank you for saving my ocean analogy. You made it really good.
No, it's a great analogy.
Because like I am a huge believer in like the whole butterfly effect.
Mm.
Like I've been battling this a lot too, just in my own mind of how I'm changing. I slowly like moved away from home after high school and I like learned to love different places and people. But now I'm going back. I mean, I'm not like going back, like I'm going to a different part of the state and it's kind of like its own other state. And it's kind of like mixed feelings because like the thing that I've been missing is people that I go back to visit every time for holidays and things like that. And now they're going to be with me. And so like that part that I'm missing, I'm going back to and I'll have access to that, but I'm also going to miss everything else that I've found to love about change in like different areas. So it's kind of like a mixed bag, but something that I've been thinking about. Also just like the idea of changing who we are in a certain place. I won't lie, it felt like I would kind of rule the spaces that I was in the sense of like I was kind of the older person and I was like a mentor to a lot of people and people thought I was great, which they can still think I am when I'm below them. But now I'm really going to be going through it. I'm going to be like the bottom of the bottom. People are probably going to spit on me at some point. Like, they won't, but like it'll feel like that. And I kind of have to climb my way to the top again if I ever get there.
I was gonna add, kind of going back to what we were talking before, where with each change, if you're content with what you have right now, whatever changes that are coming in the future is like a risk, and you don't know if it's gonna be better or worse. But I think one concept that I found really comforting is from the book Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And it talks about kind of the ways that we keep ourselves from experiencing joy. And one of them is foreboding joy, essentially meaning that instead of like living in the moment and appreciating the joy that we have right now, we're too busy thinking about what could go wrong in the future. I think like we all have the tendency to do that, but it doesn't necessarily prepare us for the changes that are coming. It just makes us more miserable in the moment. And that's something that I've been thinking a lot about because I am enjoying this period of life that I'm in right now. And there are a lot of uncertainties in the future that are coming for me. Just trying to be present enjoying the good old days before the good old days are over and just being grateful for what I have right now.
I think I have two overarching packages of vibes. Loho, I think it's really interesting that you pointed out the whole moving back to a place because wait, oh my gosh, the three of us are all a little bit different here because I think I'm not moving away from my family. I'm like, I've been away and then I'm moving to a place that's like a little further away, but it's like, it's kind of the same. And then Loho, you're kind of moving back to being a little bit closer in proximity. And then Jam, you're going away. So it's like three different situations, which is interesting. And we can unpack that. The other package of vibes that I had was
Oh my gosh, that was genius. Unpackaging your packages. Gosh.
Yeah, we can unpack.
No.
Okay, I'll just lay it. I'll lay it there. We can pick. Jam, with what you were saying about enjoying the good old days before the good old days are over. I want to say like maybe 6 weeks out from my like move date. It was a pretty tough time in my brain. It was a rough time. But then the closer that I got to like my actual move date, the busier I started getting because you got to like figure out the details. There's packing, there's like seeing all like the people last minute and then like wrapping up work and stuff. I got super busy. I want to say like 3 weeks out from my actual move date. And it got to the point where I was just too tired to think about anything. And so that made the actual process of moving really slow. Like earlier this year, it was horrible because I felt like I was like moving at a glacial pace towards like this collision, but then it started speeding up, and then all of a sudden it was going so fast that I couldn't perceive anything. And then bam, I'm here. I've been here for a week.
Yeah.
I think earlier this year when I was like thinking way too hard about moving, that was like the scary thing to me. I was like, all this time is going to go by. I'm not going to be able to like think and enjoy like my last time here. Like, and I felt like this is the last time I'm going to be at this place. This is the last time I'm going to be here with these people. Like in my brain, everything was like, this is a moment. Because, like if everything is a big moment, then nothing's a big moment. And I was like, why am I not feeling sentimental about all of this? But then once things started speeding up, I was like, okay, it's done. Like, it's just I've created a monster. It's just gonna run now. And then now I'm here. And I don't know. I think if you had talked to me even like 3 months ago about whether that would be the worst way for things to go, I'd be like, yeah, like I didn't think about anything. Like I didn't get to enjoy this or enjoy that. But in a lot of ways, I think I did get to enjoy it because I was just doing it how things always were.
Cat created a monster.
Yeah, because it's like you decide to change, you decide things are going to change, and then you can't take your decision back anymore.
You first half or second half decision maker.
We were telling each other what we thought our strengths and weaknesses were. And then my whole thesis was that Loho is indecisive in the first half, and then Jam is indecisive in the second half. Where Loho like really thinks hard before the decision, and then afterwards it's like, I made the decision, it's done. And then Jam, I don't know, she just goes for things and it blows my mind, but then we spend like hours debriefing it afterwards. It's so funny to me because we end up debriefing either way, but it's just like for Loho it's before and for Jam it's after.
Okay, this does make a lot of sense though, because I'm like a little bit less than 2 months away from moving, and I honestly have not thought too much about it. And I'm just like, all right, it's just gonna happen when it happens. But then when I get there, I'm probably gonna be like, oh shoot.
Yeah, no, literally yesterday I journaled so much and I was like preparing myself for all the changes, and like I think that's all you can do, and you just prepare and you go. But I mean, I'm sure there's, as always, a balance between the two. Like you can't sit on something for too long before you make a decision or you go through changes.
Or you can go and then prepare.
That's like the exact antonym of preparation.
Oh my God, I have a table. literally tabling my worries until after the change happens. I've been saying that I don't have a table because of the whole internal monologues thing, or Kat has a table because she can be like, all right, I'm gonna think about this later. And so she puts whatever she's worrying about on the table, and then she doesn't think about it until the table overflows. But I'm always like, "Oh, I don't have a table because I can't just like think about things later if I'm like thinking about it right now." Well, I just realized I do have a table, but in a much larger sense.
The table's so big, Jam didn't know she was on.
Yeah.
She's like, where's the table? It's like, Jam, you're literally sitting on it. Yeah. For you, it's not preparation, it's post-paration.
Do you like saying goodbye?
I was just gonna bring that up. Okay, two things. First thing, I may have been talking to our future editor at one point in time, and I was like, goodbyes are just a formality. And I think it's kind of true. I still stand by it, but I have learned that they're nice to have now because there's like, closure and whatnot. But I think for me, I, as a philosophy, don't believe in goodbyes in the sense of like things that I want to let go, it'll happen naturally. And I don't believe in the goodbye because like whatever happened between us isn't gone. It's still there and it's like still a thing. But people that I really care about and like want to say goodbye to, I think I want to try to keep them in my life. And I think that kind of goes back to like the whole technology thing of like, I have the privilege of being able to do that now because we have the tools to do so. I will say, I don't think I've ever been in a situation yet, maybe tomorrow, of like, where I actually am saying like goodbye to something. Like that's something that I don't have control over keeping. Maybe
Oh no.
maybe another situation is like my dog dying, but
No.
anyways, I'm not really an emotional person. Like when it comes to these things of like things ending, but when it's like truly, truly over, I think that's when I actually get emotional and I like can tell that I care about it. But I think maybe this shows that I'm a philosopher of Kat's take where you are capable of change. At least like for me anyways, like success is always defined by like my efforts towards something. So if I am always like I'm going to work hard to keep something alive or like a relationship or something like that or like something that I'm striving for, then that's all I can do and I don't feel bad about like if something goes away. But if I have no control over it, that's when I get sad because I'm like powerless. Okay, you have thoughts.
Number one, I agree that you're not an emotional person when it comes to goodbyes. Because I remember when COVID first started and you're moving back home, everyone was leaving. And I was so sad and I started crying, but you were just laughing the whole time. And I was like, oh my God, I was leaving. And Lo was like, no, I'm going to be back in 2 weeks. And he came back 2 years later.
See, I wasn't sad because I knew it was going to happen again.
I know, but I was so sad.
Listen, I'm sorry.
Second thing, closure. I think the act of saying goodbye is not necessarily an indication for closure, but it can be a tool.
Yes. Like the initiation of maybe closure and like allowing yourself to like go through the emotions or at least being like, okay, that's done. And then the emotions that follow can occur.
Yeah. The example that I'm thinking of is like letting go of a friendship. Maybe the last time you saw or hung out with that friend, you didn't necessarily say goodbye, but like over time you process the times that you spent together and you're like, okay, like I'm thankful for that even though we don't have our friendship anymore. Or like after you process all of that, then it's like, okay, I'm okay letting this friendship go.
And like there is like a mourning period of, oh, like it's over and it's kind of gone.
Yeah, but it's like just because you said goodbye doesn't mean that you've processed all of that, or just because you didn't say goodbye doesn't mean that you don't have closure.
I also hate saying goodbyes. And I also don't think I'm a very emotional goodbyer either to people specifically. Because Loho, I kind of get what you're saying. Like, even though I'm sad about leaving like a place, because places are always hard to get back to with technology, it's like, yeah, like if I want to see you, I'll see you. If I really want to hang out, we'll make it work. But when things change and when you enter a new place, a new space, you have to clear out stuff to make space for new stuff. And with that, it's not just like just stuff. In a lot of ways, it is also people. And this time, I think I felt sentimental about this a little bit. Well, like it sounds really bad to say it like that, but it is like, you know, if you want to make time to get to know people in the new space that you're at, if you want to make time to like grow in a new context, then you do have to like kind of let go of some of your context with other people. That's what I've realized can be kind of sad about moving or leaving a place. And then you kind of have to be conscious of this in your own head. And it does have to be like a mutual thing too. But there are just people who you like really like and are great and top tier. But in order to grow in a new place, you're just not going to have like the same context with them. It's kind of like when a class ends, you know, and you have like a really great friend in your class, but then the class is over and it's like, well, I need a great friend in my next class too. Oh, and then the other thing that I think I have realized that is a little bit sad about like saying goodbye to people is not necessarily like saying goodbye to like a specific person, but saying goodbye to your relationship where you're at now and how it is. Because it's like we we're talking about, oh, you know, being fond of who you are in the moment, but it's like also I'm fond of like the good times I've been having with this person at this moment. And even though like I might see them again, we'll be in contact.
Dude, this reminds me of when we recorded thoughts on season 3. Because, I mean, the podcast isn't over, but it's going to change. And like these good times are not going to be the same good times anymore. And I got really sad. Okay, I guess I'm the only emotional goodbyer here.
Well, maybe after this conversation, I'm going to be more of a emotional goodbyer, it sounds like. Realizing things that I'm losing. I think, though, where this podcast came out of and like what the purpose of it came out of a really horrible time, but it made something really great. And I think like we kind of grew with the podcast too. I mean, the things that we've talked about and like I think we kind of hyped ourselves up because apparently people like the podcast, which is cool to see and something that like we started ourselves. More like Cat and Jam, less Loho.
Oh my gosh.
Like the cultivation of it, like I mean, like okay, but like the work that was put into it is cool to see. That something that we were able to make, we put ourselves out there and it was something that built us up in a sense, or like showed us that we're not completely crazy. We learned how to podcast better, a skill that I don't know was a thing to develop and learn, but goes to show, you know, you're always learning something new every day.
Dude, I feel like I've grown so much from the making of this podcast. It has never been for the listeners.
It's never for the listeners, but the listeners was a nice add-on that I was like,
yeah, it's a cherry on top.
Yeah, like it's something to get hype about.
You know what has changed a lot since we started? Our hair.
Oh, this is true.
I thought about this actually when I was making the Shanxi tile because I was like cutting out those little like faces that we had. And I was like, okay, first of all, Jam's hair is way shorter. Second of all, my hair is way long. Well, now it's way shorter. And then Loho's hair actually is kind of the same as when we started, but it went through a big change in the middle. So the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Oh my God. The chaos never stops.
No, I don't know. I'm excited for us. Like, I am sentimental about it, but also, like, it's good to feel the feelings. But I'm also like, focus on the good things that can happen, or like the positive what ifs, and not so much the, oh my gosh, what is this decision? Like, why did I make this decision kind of thing? But more like, what can I get out of it? And then taking the time to appreciate what we're leaving and like embracing whatever we're going to take on, and know that we kind of have like a support squad behind us, hopefully. And like, if you guys leave my life for whatever reason, I'll just listen to the podcast and you're still my friends.
Yeah, this is why we're making the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's another cool thing about the podcast is that like, yeah, the times are changing, but like we do have these episodes to remind us of the time that we were in and like things that we thought of. We made our own little time capsule out of it, which is cool.
Oh my gosh, we're literally just documenting change.
We are. We did.
Even like re-listening to it, we're gonna be like, ooh, we shouldn't have said that.
Oh, I know. Every episode, it's always like little disclaimer, like I'm probably gonna think differently in the next year, but like this is what I think now. And right now, that disclaimer is still stands true. That's a blanket, okay? That should be like assumed.
Yeah, should we just make it part of the jingle?
Our opinions are gonna change then.
Thoughts will go on.
This is not gonna be the last time. TLDR, it's nice knowing you. It was nice knowing the present day Cat and Jam. Can't wait to hang out with future Cat and Jam.
And saying goodbye to past Cat and Jam.
No, you're never saying truly goodbye to that because
That's true.
there's still pieces of future Cat and Jam that have old Cat and Jam.
TLDR. I have a table.
Okay, my 3 TLDRs. These are just my catchphrases. 1, the chaos never stops. 2, if it's meant to be, it'll be. 3, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Bye, Jane.
Not goodbye, Jane, because I don't believe in goodbyes. Bye, Jane.
Bye, Jane.
Let's go.
Okay, bye, Jane.